Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Maple Leaf Adventures spring trips. I am Maureen. I'm one of the owners of Maple Leaf Adventures, and I have some of the other team here with me.
And I'm Jeff over here. I'll introduce myself again on another slide.
Yeah.
Takes a little while for the owl to go over to us.
All right. Let's get started. So thank you for joining us. And what we hope we will answer for you for the end of this webinar is, where can I go that's exciting and interesting this spring? Where can I re-energize my spirit after winter? And what are the different options if I'm looking for a short trip or a long trip? Today, we're really fortunate to have with us Jeff Reynolds, who's one of our expedition leaders and has been with us for 10 years. He's an accomplished photographer, he's a biologist, and an expedition leader here and also in Antarctica. Do you want to quickly say hi?
Yeah, just wanted to say hi to everybody. I'll be coming in and out on the talk today, telling you a little bit more about the different places we're going to travel. So, hi, everybody.
And we also have Mikhail from our reservations team here. Mikhail, do you want to say a quick hi?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to see so many faces in here. I will be Kiara and I will be helping you guys out with any questions that you might have about the trips and helping you guys prepare for the upcoming trips with us.
Thanks, Mikhail. A little housekeeping note, we are recording the webinar so that people who weren't able to make it can reference it later. So if you don't want your, there might be a chance that there's a tiny little thumbnail with your face on it. If you're shy, you can turn off your video by clicking the camera icon on the top of your screen. I don't know that you'll show up, but we wanted just to make sure you knew that before we go any further. And for those of you who don't know us, welcome. Maple Leaf Adventures is an ecotourism-based boutique-size expedition cruise company. We were started in 1986 by my husband's mentor, Brian, and we have now grown to have 3 little expedition ships. So there really is one for each personality and every style of traveler, we hope. We do operate from ecotourism principles. We care deeply about this coast, which is our home, and about these boats that we all look after as a team together. So thank you again for the interest in the local option here. And we do have a special offer for our webinar participants at the end of this presentation. We'll talk about it and it'll come out in an email follow-up as well afterwards. We definitely want to hear your questions and answer them. We're going to do that in a Q&A section at the end. So if you have a question, you don't have to wait to the end. Just click the little Q&A icon at the top of your screen. I believe it's on the top. And you can type your question in there anytime. If you have other issues that aren't necessarily questions for the end of the show, you can also put them in there and Karine or Mikhail will hopefully see them and help you. All right, so let's get started. Here's what we're going to cover today. We first want to highlight for you what's unique, what's your unique experience going to be here, and who are the trips for. Then we're going to talk a little bit about why this place of the world is special and why spring is really special. We call it the secret season. Being out on the coast all the time as we are, we do know a few things that the general public doesn't about why spring is awesome. Then we'll go into the actual detailed itineraries. There's quite a few of them, as you probably noticed. So we're going to try and get through them rapidly, but please do follow up if you have more detailed questions. And then a little bit about life on board, and then we'll go to your questions. So let's get started. Now, on these trips, probably the most unique thing about them is you're traveling on these tiny little ships that are very comfortable through an incredibly grand landscape that has about 25,000 kilometers of coastline and just dozens of fjords and thousands of islands and archipelagos. And so that's what makes these trips really unique, is the sense of sheer scale and your little human tribe of people exploring it. We get to have the joy of spending days exploring together in small groups, and it really does bring lightness to the spirit. This is Bryony Penn, one of our naturalists, who's a professor and a museum designer and a broadcaster and an artist and an author. Very accomplished woman with Penelakut Elder, Florence James, and then our guests. And you can see the bonding that's happened on this trip. We also have very small groups. So when we say small groups, we mean not 300, not 100, but just 8, 12, or 24 guests. So it really brings people together. It creates a very natural interaction. The crew, there's 4 or 5 on the smaller ships and 10 or 11 on the larger ship. And the guests really form bonds and jokes and have a good time together. And with such little boats, we can get to places big boats can't. And with small groups, we're very flexible. So you're literally, there's no barriers between you and the experience, no crowd control. And you're literally, with Jeff here, standing on the edge of Burnaby Narrows, looking at intertidal life if you want to be. So who are the trips for? They're for people who want to learn, people who want to connect with the local experiences, people who want to be off the beaten track. They're for people who don't mind if we're out looking for bears and it starts to rain. We're just going to put on rain gear and explore the forest. The ships are warm when we get back. It's not a problem. They're not for people who need to be connected to the internet all the time, need to go shopping, want lots of shows other than the stars at night. That sounds like you, then these trips are for you. One brief note about our fares, they are all inclusive. So that means that when you're looking at them, first of all, they're in Canadian dollars. If there's any Americans on here, your dollar is very strong against ours right now. So it's a good time. All of the experience is included. We're not doing transactional tourism where everything you want is another fee. It's just a genuinely beautiful experience where everything is taken care of and you're just there to enjoy. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to talk about what makes this part of the world so special.
Hi, everyone. I know this is going to be a lot of information coming at you, but I thought if you aren't familiar with this region of the world, then it'd be nice to get a little summary, see what this place is all about. So let's get into it. So starting from the south, we have the Gulf Islands, beautiful area that's protected waters, sandstone along the coast, very rich intertidal life, but somewhat lower sized mountains and hilltops. But as we go north and get into the Great Bear Rainforest, we start heading into fjords. They're deep and steep. We have lush temperate rainforests, lots of meltwater coming down from the spring melt, creating lots of waterfalls. It's a real treat. And then as those waters are flowing into the ocean, they interact kind of in these estuaries. These estuaries are where the freshwater hit the seawater, and it's just kind of a burst of life from low-lying vegetation to starting to spur the growth of phytoplankton, and then the zooplankton starts to eat that. And so just a big bloom of life starts to occur on the coast. And then along the coast as well, we have these temperate rainforests that are just absolutely beautiful. We end up going into these places and learning about the small all the way up to the very large. And as you can see, they're just kind of a photographer's dream. So from spruce and hemlock and Gary oak forests to sometimes we end up on exposed outer coasts, these beautiful beaches, white sand and long walks that we can take people on. But now, why spring? The spring season is just one of those amazing times of the year that a lot of people start to shy away from because they think maybe it's a little cold or maybe there's not a lot to see, but it is the opposite. It is the most beautiful. There's so many colors. Like, it's the colorful season. All the flowers are blooming. You get to go and walk in these lush estuary grasses. The sedges are growing. The lupins are in bloom. These chocolate roses. These things are what the animals are coming to pollinate. I like to call these the what do you call them? The charming insects, because it's not that we have the annoying insects out. These are the charming insects coming to pollinate. They're visually appealing and they aren't bugging you. And we've got these, yeah, the flowers are just off the hook. Then we end up having a little bit better weather. So clear, maybe crisp temperatures, but less chances of big rainfalls and dumps, and more chances of nice big blue skies and calm seas, which is also really nice.
And it's usually, I know guests ask often, like, what's the temperature typically? And I would say on these spring trips, it's typically between 15 and 20 degrees Celsius in the daytime, a little bit cooler at night, but so really lovely.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also the season of wildlife awakening. So here we have a grizzly bear in the sedges. This is what they're coming to eat in the spring season, which a lot of people think berry season may be just in the salmon season in the fall, but more and more we're being surprised that you see more and more bears in the sedges and the estuaries in the spring than you even see in the fall sometimes, because the sedges are bringing these bears to those locations because they're the most nutritious time to eat the grasses. So we can potentially get right up and close and personal to the new cubs of the year, seeing them in the estuaries. They're just busy feeding. They're not interested in anything else. They're just interested in feeding. They've just come out of hibernation. So that, along with the start of the growth of the algae, so not only just the phytoplankton, but also the kelps. The kelp forests are growing. The wildlife on the intertidal side of things are starting to come up and eat those algae. The krill are starting to eat the phytoplankton, so that brings with it a plethora of animals. So you get the birds migrating north. Here are some surf scoters. You get cormorants and the forest birds, lots of marine birds and marine mammals. The marine mammals are also taking advantage of the plethora of life that's blooming on the coast. The pinnipeds, the stellar sea lions, the largest eared seals, they're pupping at this time, which is a real cool thing to see on the rookery rocks. So we get a chance to come and see those locations and see the pups being born and even maybe some mating. So that, along with a lot of other marine mammals like Pacific white-sided dolphins are in the fjords. Dall's porpoises, the humpbacks start to come back to the shoreline here from the Baja and from Mexico, starting their journey to start feeding. And then sort of in the later season of spring, we start to see the fin whales, the second largest baleen whales, second largest whales in the world, start to come back to our coast, which is a beautiful sight to see. And then we're always looking for these orcas. The transients and the resident orcas are cruising our coastline, and we are always on the lookout for them. And luckily, a lot of times we end up seeing them on our trips. So they're a beautiful part of the coast. And then along the way, we have different research stations that we may be able to visit. This is a whale research station on Finn Island, but there's a bunch of them up and down the coast, kind of integrated into our trips that we always try to visit. And we also help contribute to funding to these locations too. So that is me for the wildlife and nature. And I'll pass off to Maureen for the culture.
Yeah, so this coastline that we're traveling, as you probably all know, is the territory of dozens of nations who've been here since at least before the last ice age, just so long that it's really more appropriate to say since time immemorial. We have, here's a map that shows you some of the different groupings, and we travel through a lot of them. For the entire life of the company, we've had respectful and reciprocal relationships with nations in the territories that our trips operate in. They're different in different territories, and we do include both their economic arrangements and agreements where we provide money into the communities or different programs as part of operating in the trip, and we also employ guides so that our guests can meet people. We can sometimes go into certain communities and visit certain cultural sites. And on some of our trips, we even have arranged to have guides come out with us for part or all of the journey so that people can really experience the depth of this coast, not just its majestic ecosystems and functioning nature, but also what it is to have been human here for such a long time. And be integrated with the coast as well. All along the way, where depending on where we are, there is so much evidence to see of indigenous nations here, whether it's white shell midden beaches in the Gulf Islands, or pictographs on the rock walls, or poles and house remains, or villages that we can visit to this day. We're always enjoy every opportunity that we can to meet with people, and we do things on the fly as well as have programmed things. And as I said, a lot of the fees that we pay go to support Coastal Guardian Watchman programs, which are like stewardship programs in the different nations looking after the coast. So you might be wondering now, that's all great, but how am I going to experience it? So Jeff's going to take you through a typical day, and then we'll get into the itineraries.
So after a very restful evening, hopefully you wake up nice and early in the morning, get a view of the scenery around our anchorage, and we will have coffee brewing ready for you in the morning, and then we'll have a cold breakfast out, usually granola or fruit and toast, and then we'll have a hot breakfast. So something that's plated, depending on your dietary requirements, and it'll just come up and be plated and put in front of you. If you don't want it, that's okay. And then we'll head off onto a short trip. That short trip could be in the tenders, just cruising around some islands. We could be viewing wildlife from the boat, or we could be forest walking or even kayaking early in the morning. Then we'd head off. Well, we'd come back to the ship for a snack. Maybe we have the snack in the tender, who knows? And then eventually come back to the ship for lunch. On board around 12:30-ish. Every time is an ish. And then afterwards, maybe we're repositioning the ship during lunch, and we're heading to another short trip, maybe a research station or hot spring, maybe another beach hike, or a forest walk. But we'll always have a snack mid-afternoon, just in case you're hungry. And reposition, or maybe we're already at our anchorage and have a little evening plan before dinner, maybe kayaking or another boat toodle. And then sit down for a beautiful dinner on the ships with plated hot meals, depending on your dietary requirements, of course. And then after dinner, a chance to relax, maybe stargaze, play games. The ship has lots of books to read as well, especially focused on where we are. You can read up on a lot of different topics on board the ships. Now, what sort of trips are offered in the spring? So this is a little graphic showing where these regions are that we cruise. So from the south to the north, I'm just going to click through. We have the Gulf Islands, Desolation Sound, that's the region for that trip. Inside Passage, the Great Barrier Forest, it's a little bit bigger than it's showing here. We'll go more into detail into each one of these itineraries. Then a Kitlope trip within the Great Bear, and Haida Gwaii. So before we get started on the itineraries, we have this really beautiful video depicting a sort of a guest's perspective on a trip on Maple Leaf. So we just want to play that for you now, and then we'll continue on. Oh, of course.
Well, I hope that was inspiring. It always inspires me. Okay, so we begin spring trips with the joyful beauty of the Salish Sea in full bloom. I have lived near on the Salish Sea my whole life near these islands, and I can tell you that when I first went out here on the Maple Leaf, I think it was in 2004, I was absolutely amazed at this world I had no idea about as a resident of Victoria. It's truly a remarkable experience. So, whoopsies, I apologize for that. This is the routing of a typical trip in spring. We start in Sydney here, which is just outside of Victoria, and we like to say we do a bit of a circle route around the islands from one way to the other, from one side to the other, based on weather. We're going to places that are way off the beaten track. There's no ferries. You're not going to be driving on a road through the forest to a bed and breakfast. We're going to go to these outer islands, such as Tumbo Island, the outside of Saturna Island, the Bell Chains. We'll go to little ones you may not have heard of, such as Russell, Wallace, and Prevost. Just really incredible, beautiful parts of the Gulf Islands that are they're not untouched, but they're in a more natural state than, say, a developed urban environment, which we have so much of. This is one of Canada's most endangered landscapes. So here is what it looks like. I'll just quickly go through some of the slides so you get an experience of what it's like. And on one of these trips, our Salish Sea Expedition on Swell, we do have an Indigenous storyteller, knowledge keeper on board who is able to give sometimes parallel but much deeper views, names, history of these places. This year, we're really pleased to welcome back Dave Bowley from the Snuneymuxw Nation, and we've worked with others in the past. So here's a few images of what spring in the Gulf Islands looks like in terms of wildlife, nature, and your experience as a guest. These are short little trips too, so they're great for like a little getaway. Again, this is the big picture where we start and end in Sydney outside of Victoria, and these are the all-inclusive fares on Maple Leaf and Swell. Those are the ships that offer those trips. And now I will pass it over to Jeff for Desolation Sound.
All right. So Desolation Sound, this trip takes place just a little bit further north from the Gulf Islands. It is also a very beautiful place, and we get into more deeper fjords, as you can see in the little graphic above. Beside the itineraries, we go deep into Toba Inlet, sometimes even Butte, but maybe not both. So we start in Campbell River, and we end up leaving Campbell River and heading over to either Cortez or maybe on the way, we stop by Middle Natch, which is right in the middle here, all weather dependent. And we start our tour around Desolation Sound. So heading over towards West Redonda, heading to shore onto some little hikes that are along the shore here, exploring waterfalls. Eventually, maybe day 2, day 3, we end up going into Toba Inlet, exploring some of the estuaries up here. Very big hotspots for bears coming down in the early season for the sedges. And then this whole area here is just waterfall haven here, really big waterfalls along those shores. And then coming back down on our way south, maybe day 3, day 4, we end up in Frito Haven, a really beautiful little area for kayaking and tender tootling. Intertidal life is incredible. And there's some really beautiful hikes in this area that traverse a lot of different ecosystems, which as a naturalist, it's a treat to be able to take people into these places because I can talk about a range of different places the whole way through the walk. And it's not even that long of a walk. And then heading back out, maybe dip down to Savory, but hit up Middle Natch on the way back before we end up finishing in Campbell River. And so the next few pictures will show just a few pictures from these trips, heading into the forest, the rainforest. The early season starts to see the skunk cabbage with its flowers in bloom. Beautiful waters in the fjords. Snow-capped mountains are a beautiful sight during the season because they don't last very long until the summer. It's just without the snow caps, and it makes it, for the photography, it makes it look really beautiful with those snow-capped mountains. Waterfalls, kayaking is a must on our trips, heading up these beautiful sandy spits. Again, kayaking, and then maybe potentially running into these black bears or grizzly bears on the trip, as they're also foraging in intertidal. Middle Natch, like I said, it's this beautiful, diverse ecosystem on a small island. It has pinnipeds like sea lions and seals, cormorants nesting, other seabirds nesting, and migrating birds coming through, and then the flowers. The flowers are a hit on this island in the spring, along with cactus. Cactus, one of the few islands in BC that have these plants growing. It's just dry enough for that to happen. And coming back to a closing ship in the end. So this is the location that we travel to. So from Vancouver to Campbell River, and then you can either get there by car or fly, and vice versa, getting back to your destination. And these are the prices for the Swell and Maple Leaf trips, as well as Cascadia, all inclusive as well. And we're going to head right into the next portion of the itineraries, the Great Bear Rainforest. So this is an incredible place. It's very large. We have a huge itinerary of trips that take place here. So we have about 4 that I'm going to go through. You can see the region is quite large. We're going to go through different timings and where these trips take place. So just going on to the next.
And one of the things I wanted to say here is sometimes people ask us, well, which one do I choose? You've got 4 itineraries, help me out here. The highlights on all of them are the same. There's stunning fjords, beautiful rainforest, outer coast, there's marine mammals in the water, there's bears and other things on the land. But really, we're just showing different parts of it, and having different trip lengths and different ships. So you should hopefully be able to find something that meets your budget, meets your schedule. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Maureen. So I'm just going to start from we're going to start from the south and go to the north. So the first trip heading into the Great Bear would be this Vancouver Island to Great Bear Rainforest trip, starting Campbell River and heading up to Bella Bella. It's 9 days on Maple Leaf, and it, like Maureen said, it hits all the typical Great Bear Rainforest highlights. And yeah, it's a really beautiful trip, especially this one around Cape Caution and heading up to Bella Bella, potentially getting into some of the outer shore islands, which have potential wolves and sea otters to be viewed here. So very cool trip, definitely worth the time. Then we get into the Great Bear Rainforest, Bella Bella and Kitimat trips. So these trips, you fly into Bella Bella, we meet you at the airport, and you get on board the ships, and we head north or the reverse. So we may start from Kitimat and head south. And these are trips that take place both on Swell and Maple Leaf. And these hit up all the typical places in the Great Bear: fjords, estuaries, outer coast beaches. We're viewing whales along the way, hopefully seeing some bears, and the wildflowers are starting to bloom as well. So where in the fall we follow the salmon south, in the spring we follow the flowers north, and then we head back home. And then the third Great Bear trip is the Kitimat to Prince Rupert trip, which is only on Swell, and it hits up all the same ones, flying to Kitimat and exit at Prince Rupert. And this gives us a chance to visit a little bit of a different part of the coast, potentially getting into some of the outer islands as well, and maybe seeing some wolves in the early season. And these are just some pictures before I hit up the 4th itinerary. I just want to show you some of the typical views of the Great Bear Rainforest. This is a place called Coots, and it's a beautiful estuary. We head out in the tenders to explore these estuaries. We're really intimately in the scenery, as you can see. And just on cue, these grizzly bears, the cubs, they're eating the sedges. And they're watching us, we're watching them. We're viewing some flowers. Lupins are in full bloom. We're taking time in the forest to both take it all in and also learn. We have, again, the weather is a gem. It just highlights these granite walls in the forests a little bit more.
Not that we're promising it's going to be sunny all the time.
Yes, can't promise.
Sure.
The humpbacks are starting to return to the shorelines, as well as the orcas traversing through, potentially being able to stop at some of the research stations like Cetacea Lab, and then getting out to some of the outer coastlines to explore some beaches, going for nice long walks, looking for seashells and exploring into the even the bogs. There's even low-lying bogs in some of these locations in the Great Bear. So different habitats, different levels of fun, and incredible scenery, as well as the chance of potentially stopping off at some hot springs. There's scattered all along the coast, and we really like to highlight some of these places along the way, and getting a chance to stop there is always a treat. Now, the last one I wanted to talk about in the Great Bear Rainforest is the Kitlope trip, and there are 2 trips offered this season on Swell and Maple Leaf, and we fly into Kitimat. We meet at the airport, come to the ships, we get in, and we head out into the Kitlope region, which is down the Gardner Canal of the Huckshua, one of the longest fjords in BC. And we go to the very end, and the idea is to get to the Kitlope Lake, which is a very sacred and beautiful place, part of the Kitlope Conservancy, which is the largest intact temperate rainforest in the world, maybe even the universe, according to Cecil Paul. So Kitimat, Kitlope, 7 days. We tailor this trip to a very intimate story with Cecil Paul and his journey to protect this place, along with a few other stories that hit on this journey. So it's not just a place to see the scenery, but it's also a very intimate story to tell along the way. And getting to the lake, you'll have to come to see what makes this place so special, but people don't leave this place unchanged. And the estuary that we go through ends up going very far inland, so we start to see different species that we would not typically see on the coastal range. And yeah, the calmness of the lake, the scenery here is incredible. We have a chance to get this far up because the spring meltwater raises the river high enough for our tenders to get through, which is the key for the timing that we go there to at, as well as potential of grizzly bears in the estuaries, and even when we're so far inland, potentially moose and caribou, which is a real spectacular thing to see. And Cecil here in front of the Gig-Skolax pole, which is also another part of this journey story. All right, I'm going to leave you and head off to Maureen.
We're at our final itinerary for the spring that we want to present to you, and this is our Haida Gwaii trip. Across the Hecate Strait from the Great Bear Rainforest is the stunning archipelago called Haida Gwaii. In this quick overview slide, I want to show you that we begin the trip up here on the northern tip of Haida Gwaii. So this trip actually covers the entire archipelago, which you need a bit of time to do. If you're on a Cascadia trip, which is our catamaran, we include the flight from Vancouver. So you start at Vancouver Airport South Terminal. If you're on the Maple Leaf trip, we meet you here at Masset Airport and we can help you get there. The first day, we call it our land day because we actually stay overnight on land in a local lodge and we explore this northern island here. And then we're down in Skidegate or Dutch-and-Geets for our overnight, for a welcome dinner with locals. And just a really lovely welcome to the islands. Then we board the ships the next day. So here's a quick overview of that first day that I just mentioned, going up, exploring the north. Welcome to our guides, explore a little bit, and a nice local lodge. On day 2, we will then start our journey through the Haida world with a visit to the Haida Heritage Center and Haida Gwaii Museum, where we have Haida guides who are really awesome at interpreting cultural history for you, and then there is time to explore as well. Then we board the boats and set off into the southern portion of Haida Gwaii that is the famed famed Waihanas. This is the one that was featured on the news in the 80s and the 90s when everyone was trying to protect it. And as we travel through these islands for a week, we're going ashore at Haida village sites and the rainforest and many other locations. This is at Tanu, which typically we will visit on our first day, which is a great way to see the layout of a Haida village site. Because there are it's a really good layout and some monumental remains still there. Then we make our way through to other places that we go ashore. And another highlight on day 4 is some of the richest and densest intertidal life on the planet here at what's called Burnaby Narrows or Dolomite Narrows, or I actually don't know how to pronounce the Haida name, but I will learn. One of our elders who's on board Cascadia trips with us is the Haida language teacher, so I'm doing my best. And that after exploring some of the forest and maybe watching some black bears as well at different sites, we make our way down to the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Skungwai. Some people may know it by the name of Ninstins, but it's Skungwai, Red Cod Island and Red Cod Island Village. Weather permitting, and it's like almost for sure that we'll get here, but maybe one trip in 50, there's just some reason we can't. This is a very special place, and the earlier that you go, the fewer other tour companies might be around, so the longer we have in these village sites. After we've hit that kind of apex or the opposite of that in there, we might go around to the southern beaches, and then we start to make our way up through the archipelago to other areas we've missed on the way down, such as Hot Springs Island here in this picture. And then, weather permitting, we'll go out to Windy Bay, which is a very important cultural site because it's where everybody camped when those logging protests finally stopped the logging and ultimately resulted in the protection of Waihanas. And so the legacy pole here, raised in 2013 and carved by carvers on Haida Gwaii, commemorates the protection of Waihanas. And again, there's many other places that we're visiting and kayaking, but a highlight then of day 7 typically is a visit to Kuna Village, or Skadans as it's known, which has quite a lot of standing poles again and a beautiful location. If we're on Cascadia on day 8, we are making our way after a morning short trip back to Sandspit to say goodbye. And on Maple Leaf, we do have one more day in order to sail. And so that's what this represents here. On Maple Leaf, we have 5 crew. Sometimes our crew, some of them are Haida, and sometimes they're not Haida. It just depends on our scheduling and certifications. But on every short trip, we have at Haida sites, we have Haida watchman guides who share their culture with us and are just really welcoming and wonderful. On Cascadia, we're really fortunate to have a Haida storyteller with us as one of the crew members for the whole trip. So that's a really, really special experience as well. But sailing Maple Leaf through Juan Perez Sound with humpback whales around you and the San Cristobal Mountains is also an incredible experience. So this is what the departures are, and again, a quick overview of how you get there. And now I hand it over to Jeff for a quick overview of the ships. Oh, it's me. I'm sorry. I hand it back to myself for a quick overview of our ships and your experience on board. And we're just entering the final turn. Thank you for staying with us for so long throughout this presentation. We have 3 ships, as I mentioned: small, medium, large, or small, smaller, and smallest. So we'll start with the middle ship, Swell. She is our classic tugboat, built in 1912 and fully refurbished in 2004 with an upgrade by us in 2014 for 6 cozy cabins, all with private en-suites, which is, I can tell you, for a little boat like that on this coast, kind of amazing. And here we'll just flip through what she looks like inside. Obviously, her interior is a nod to her heritage. She is a beautiful wooden boat and comes with all the warmth of a wooden boat, and a lot of beautiful touches by all of us who look after her and absolutely love her. And yes, she does have a tiny little 4-person hot tub for those great views. She has 3 categories of cabins. The category 3s are the largest, and this is one of them. And the washroom is through this door here, in case you're wondering. 120 square feet, so they're all cozy, but cute. These are the category 2s. There's one with up and down bunks, and the others have these angled boats. They're about 80 square feet, and again, have their own washroom. And for those of us who are campers and hikers and kayakers and so forth, this little category 1 cabin at 60 square feet is all you need, but very small for compared to a hotel. All right, that's swell. That looks a little small for you. May I introduce Cascadia, which is our 3rd child, we like to say. She's a 138-foot catamaran. So we call her big, but really she's a maximum of 22 guests on Haida Gwaii and 24 elsewhere, and 12 spacious cabins. She's got beautiful lodge-like interiors with a lot of art, and also beautiful open air lounge areas, some protected from the elements and some right out there in it. As you can see, this table is probably the most popular sitting spot outside on Cascadia because you're right above the water. Long table dining experience, huge professional galley, and just a lot of deck space to walk around on and explore on. Such a spacious ship, and yet you're still very close to nature and the water, as you can see. On all our ships, the bridge or the wheelhouse is open and guests are welcome to be part of the experience of navigating the ship and talking to the mariners. And of course, Cascadia has also a beautiful hot tub with a view. All our ships also have kayaks, and kayaking is a beautiful thing to do in the anchorages. Cascadia also has 3 categories of cabins. So her category 3 is 235 square feet. So significantly larger than a category 3 on swell. They all have doors onto the deck and big windows, which you can't see in this picture. So we'll have to update this picture next time, but you can just believe me, they're there. And through here is the very spacious washroom. Category 2s are the mid-size. Again, they can be either king beds or or a queen or 2 singles. And they also have doors onto the deck. And here's a picture of one of the larger windows here that you can see. And then category 1s are very spacious. They're 195 square feet, so significantly larger than Swell's largest cabin, with a lot of natural light as well. And configurations can be queen, king, or 2 twins. And here's just a glimpse of what some of the washrooms look like. They all have heated floors as well for keep your tootsies warm. And finally, if that all seems a little bit too luxe for you and really you want nothing between you and the adventure of it all, and you want a classic, beautiful, legendary ship, this is the Maple Leaf, the flagship of our company, the spirit of our company. She's a 92-foot schooner and she takes 8 guests. And this is the original ship and the ship that Cecil invited to come into the Kitlope and called the Great White Canoe for bringing people to help protect his homeland. She's got thousands of square feet of sail and is really wonderful because when you're on her, you have nature around you 360 degrees all the time on deck, if you want to be on deck all the time. If not, there's some cozy wheelhouse lounge and dining lounge to go into, where you can sit and chat and have a snack or look at the library. And yeah, we dine either al fresco or down below. And the accommodations are like the grand old days of rail travel. I don't know what's going on with the slide. It's flickering for me. Hopefully it'll settle down. There we go. So we have queen beds down, single bed up, and then heavy curtains around, and 3 shared washrooms on board. Just an amazing ship. And Jeff, over to you to finish up with food.
Coming up on lunch almost, and yeah, this journey through the areas that we go are just highlighted with the incredible food that gets served to us on these ships. So there's 3-course dinners, there's lunch and breakfast, and then 2 snacks a day, and all these meals are tailored to you. So before you come, you have a questionnaire that you fill out that's telling us what you eat and more so what you don't eat, so that we can prepare the meals for you that you're going to enjoy. So just got to click through a few just so you see it's not only a delicious journey, but it's also the meals look very beautiful. Yeah, it's not just placed on the plate like I do at home. It's really well thought out, and these chefs are artists.
And I wanted to point out the sea asparagus on the
sea asparagus, foraged from shore, added to the plate. So little garments that we can add from the shore, we definitely do. And like I said, it's just a real treat to come back to these ships and then have these incredible meals to warm us back up and recharge us for the next adventure.
And finally, you've met Jeff now, and isn't he a wonderful guy? But I did want to briefly, in all seriousness, talk about your crew. We are a locally owned company, and our crew are all local. We're Canadian flagged and certified ships and crew. So you're traveling on these trips with these really knowledgeable people, whether it's the captain who is not hidden away from you in some bridge that's off limits, but he can tell you about his decades or her decades of navigating these very tricky coastal waters, to biologists who have been involved in the actual research on the coast so that we can understand it better, to community leaders, to people other crew who have actually worked on the boat. So from the engineer to your stew, to your captain, to your naturalist, everybody has such a lot to offer. And they're also the kindest, most wonderful, hospitable, fun-loving people. So I can't say enough about the crew. And I wanted to make that highlight here. We are part of the conservation economy here. After a lot of destructive logging was stopped, we wanted, as a community on the coast, to replace that with conservation-based work. And so our tours actually contribute to that economy, both just for the fact of you traveling here and learning about it is important. It supports the place economically and all of our people economically. We also do direct action, such as some of our marine debris cleanups. We support research and conservation, and we're involved in developing like the framework for ecotourism on the coast as well at the government level. So that's just your sort of, I guess, feel-good moment. I'm flippant, but we take it very seriously. It's part of our heart and why we do this. Once again, this is a quick how to get here. Mikhail and Kiara give you all sorts of assistance and detail with that if you need it. And again, here's a quick overview of the trips we just went through and the schedule. Again, contact us if you have questions or you want to refine which itinerary you're interested in. We do bookings with phone calls, emails. You can fill in a form on the web. You can any way you can think of it, you can contact us and we'll help you through it. We give you a full welcome aboard package and a packing list and all the rest of it. So happy to support you all the way through. And here we are with the special offer to thank you for your time here and for attending this webinar. We're taking $100 off the final balance of any trip that you book. And if you're already on a trip, contact us and we'll take care of that for you as well. If you attended this webinar on any 2025 spring itinerary on Swell or Maple Leaf. So you can take advantage of that if they're booked by March 21st. These can be combined with other special offers that we have on our website. And you can actually, if you want, click this link right here. Whether it's solo travelers traveling with a group, coming back and doing multiple trips in a year, or back-to-back trips, we have several options. This is our contact info if you don't have it already. And now we come to the question and answer section. At the end, I'm going to put this screen up, and you can actually click on each ship on your screen, and it will take you to a virtual tour inside and outside the ship, which is really cool. So back to questions and answers. And we are going to start the questions. So excuse me, my technical savvy here. Do we just hit the Q&A?
We hit it, and then we can go down list.
Okay. Nancy, there's a question about seasickness, and I'm going to take it because I am prone to motion sickness. So I feel like I'm very well qualified to answer this question. I've made myself seasick driving through the mountains myself. So that's me. For the most part, this coast is so protected from open ocean swells because of all the islands that the water is pretty flat pond. You will have noticed in most of the pictures, it's pretty flat pond because all that wave energy has been taken out by hitting the outer coast of all the islands. So generally, it's probably the best coast in the entire world if you are a seasickness prone person. There are a couple of spots on different trips where we go out and around certain points and there might be waves for, between 1 and 3 hours. And in that case, I recommend just coming out on deck. That's a more fun way to explore it anyways. There are a few drugs you can take as well, just for those couple of hours. Okay, so the next question is Bob Black. Do you want to take that? Are there trips available in July?
Yeah, of course, there's some, there's Great Barrier Forest trips in July. There's even Haida trips in July. It's just a different part of the season. So we're going into the summertime. We're losing the flowers. We're starting to see a little bit more bugs. Not a bad thing, but that's just kind of what we've noticed. You definitely notice when you go to shore. We have bug spray, of course. And the trees are growing all their leaves. So the forests are definitely getting more lush. But yeah, we definitely have trips in July.
Yeah, and they're great. And we have another webinar actually coming up on summer trips. I believe it's next month. So stay tuned for that. Do you catch fish that you may serve for dinner? So Fiona, the answer is yes, and you can catch fish and you can have us serve it for dinner. Currently, we don't do that ourselves for various reasons that I won't get into that have nothing to do with our desire to connect you with your food. But if you get a fishing license, absolutely. The only place we don't do that is in Alaska and in the Salish Sea, because there's been a lot of overfishing in the Salish Sea and we don't want to contribute to that. But on the other itineraries, you can. Flower identification books on board? Yeah,
there are a lot of flower identification books and little laminated pamphlets that help us ID some of the flowers. It's a great tool.
And then somebody else that I'm interested in spending time not in but on and experience what life is like there. Yes, that's one of the misconceptions sometimes about our trips, because you see the boats and you think we're only on the water. We spend a huge portion of our time ashore, and in Gulf Islands, because everything is so close together, we typically will do 3 shore trips a day usually. So, each short trip is usually between like an hour and a half and 3 hours in length. So that's a significant portion of our time there. And then you can also be, you can do kayaking on top of that.
Yeah, I feel like the Gulf Islands have the most variety of routes to be able to get on.
Yeah.
And accessibility is much better. So I find we definitely spend more time on the islands on those trips than most other places.
Yeah. And then someone's asked if we have minimum guests on the trips. We do, and we're pretty much at the minimum for every spring trip, I believe, except for maybe 1 or 2. So yeah, you can ask us individually, but there's they're pretty much all, I think, ready to go. There's a few that if one or two more people book will be green lighted. So yeah.
Are the ships linked to specific trips or do they shift around?
Do you want me to answer? Or do you want to answer?
I know that the only thing that's more specific is Maple Leaf and Cascadia do Haida Gwaii,
Yeah.
and Swell does not. Swell goes to Alaska, and Maple Leaf and Cascadia do not. So those are the only ones I think.
Yeah. So Salish Sea, really quickly, Gulf Island, Salish Sea right now is Maple Leaf and Swell. Desolation Sound is all three. Great Bear Rainforest Spring right now is Maple Leaf and Swell. Haida Gwaii is Maple Leaf and Cascadia. And that takes us through those spring itineraries.
And if the weather is really bad, do you still sail?
So, no, because there is so much to explore. One of the great things about this place is there's way more to see and do than we can do even in a week-long trip. And we are watching the weather and we carefully plan our trips, which is why we don't always say on day 2, we're absolutely going to be in this location, at Kuna Village site, because we've looked at the weather and we've arranged the itinerary according to the best weather. So if there is a storm that came up, we would be in a place where we had lots of options for a day or two just from the boat where we're anchored or travel in inside waters where we're not feeling it. Yeah.
Is there a single supplement?
I feel like I'm answering all these questions.
I'll do the next one.
We have, there's no single supplement on the Maple Leaf at all, ever. Because we take only 8 guests and we have 4 sleeping areas with 2 beds each, we pair you up with someone of the same sex. And really on a ship like that, there's so much space and so much activity that we don't actually spend a lot of time, like other than sleeping, in the sleeping areas. We have deck space and shore trips and dining and all the rest of it. On Cascadia and Swell, because they are so small and have so few cabins, on many trips there is a single supplement simply because otherwise we couldn't pay for the maintenance of the ships. But we do actually have a lot of specials, especially on spring trips, where we waive the single supplement and solo travelers can have their own cabin. Those may be mostly subscribed at this point, but you can ask Mikhail and Kiara. All right.
That was kayak. How long is a typical paddle? It varies, but typically we allocate about an hour or more to a paddle. It could be an hour in the morning. You do it before breakfast and you come back and then we head off onto our next adventure. Or you get a chance to paddle into the evening and come back before sunset if the weather is calm in the anchorage. So it varies. And we're not going out into big swelly areas or big weather. We have inflatable kayaks, which it's a kind of a double-edged sword. So you have very easy to get into, very comfortable to paddle around in, but not something to take into big seas or big wind. Not that they wouldn't be able to do it, but we don't like to take the risk.
Yeah, and sometimes, as on Cascadia, we'll break into 3 or maybe even 4 activity groups, and one activity might be the kayaking. So then it's usually a bit longer.
Yeah, you can choose. You could maybe go for 2 or 3 hours if you really wanted to.
Like with the naturalists.
Yeah, definitely come back for a snack though.
All right.
Terry and Carol have a question. How do I get a copy of this to send to some friends?
We will send out a link, I think, in our follow-up email. And if we don't, just ask for it, because we are recording this for that purpose.
We answered Sandy's question.
I think so, yeah. And Brenda, same question.
Yeah.
Have we got everything?
I think we answered all the questions.
All right. Well, if you have more, we are just a phone call or an email away. Thank you all once again. And I hope that Jeff and I have been able to convey our absolute joy in the spring trips. Yeah. I feel light in my heart every time I go out in the spring.
Yeah, I can't wait to get out. We talked about it now, but I can't wait to get out. And
so hopefully for you, that might also translate to joy in your heart as well. And we will hope to see you on the dock. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Bye for now.